Hey, hi everyone. Today I have Tim Treagus, the co-founder at IBO. IBO is a research platform that allows businesses to survey their target audiences through WhatsApp. It aims to democratize research by delivering insights and survey data to small businesses in just 2 to 3 days. IBO was founded in April in collaboration with the Delta, which is a local venture builder. At its core, IBO's mission is to help lower the barriers of entry for SA startup ecosystems when validating business and product ideas. Tim, how are you doing today?
Hello, Lebo. Nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm very good, and that was a good intro for what we do at the Delta. Yeah, excited to chat.
Good, good. Tell me a bit more about IBO. How did the name come about, and what collaboration is it with the Delta that you guys have?
Yeah, great. So the Delta is normally where I start. The Delta is, as you said, it's a venture builder, a company that builds other companies or ventures or startups, and we're across South Africa and the EU. So it's quite an interesting business where we are launching startups and ventures, typically about 10 to 20 a quarter. Right now we've got 70 in our suite, and so what happens typically is a new venture will either be ideated upon internally, or there'll be an external stakeholder that will want to build something and needs like a technical co-founding partner or sort of an entity that owns and maintains all the resources necessary to take something from idea to commercialization, and they might not be necessarily equipped to do that themselves. And that's a person, an individual, a co-founder, or it might be an entity or a corporate that actually is limited by all of the sort of the regulatory barriers that exist inside a large public company. So it makes sense for them to actually outsource that work to a smaller company that is much more nimble and agile and can execute super fast. So that's how we work. And as you can hear, we're doing this quite often. So when a new idea or business comes about, what we typically do is we communicate internally on Slack, and someone will say, hey, we've got this new company, like this is what it's about. And there'll be a whole lot of ideas that will be posted in the channel by different people. And then the top ideas will get put into a poll and people will vote. And then we'll check the domains on the internet, on GoDaddy, and check out if there's a .com or .co.za. And then we'll do it. And so that's exactly what happened here. It was pretty funny. There were a number of different things that were posted. At the time, though, I was actually it was working specifically in building data for machine learning. So I'm not sure how much you know about machine learning or supervised machine learning models, but if you think of autonomous vehicles or speech to text, as if you can see that the audio that we are speaking now can actually be transcribed and written below in captions. That's running through a speech to text model, which needs to have been developed on large data sets of transcribed audio and text. And so we were looking at which is great and works really well in English, but it doesn't work really at all in any African vernacular languages. So that was actually where we started, was looking at building out the data sets that could then be used to enable businesses to build speech to text models in South African languages, in African vernacular languages. So the AI component was largely around that sort of area, and then that's sort of how we picked it, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I would really like to delve into the Delta, maybe at another time. But tell me, what are the use cases for IBO? And what problems it is trying to solve really in the survey space?
So yes, IBO sits in the sort of the research category. But broader than that, it's research being surveys, but broader than that, it's actually about access to people that are hard to access. So if you are a business if you're a new business and you're wanting to look at validating some of the ideas that you have, or potentially you've got a new product stream that you want to launch, or you're trying to understand, listen, if I go to like tap to pay and enforce it on all smartphone users instead of them using their bank card, or if I wanted to like mix up my distribution method and integrate with like a Pick and Pay or ShopRite and have people pick up things there as opposed to a branch. And you've got all of these ideas and things that you actually want to figure out, and you can't make a decision based on what's inside your head. You actually go and need to find the research or the data from speaking or accessing a large number of people and hearing what they would ultimately do. So and that obviously exists in many different circumstances, and it's a big industry that's pretty well established, and there are a number of players that do it very well. The issue though is that a lot of the time the existing sort of mechanisms of accessing people are a bit exclusive to people from a sort of a lower LSM. And that's basically because a lot of the sort of online methods require people to firstly sometimes download an app or go somewhere else on their phone, like open up the browser and go and answer surveys where the cost in terms of data is sort of unknown to people, and it's also unfamiliar. So there's a barrier, there's a sort of a psychological barrier to actually completing those surveys because people are just cautious and skeptical of doing something that they're not so sure about, and based on phone storage and data costs. So what we then recognized is that WhatsApp is the most downloaded app in the country. It's the most used app as well. It fits very well into people's sort of existing behavior, where it's WhatsApp is associated with communicating with your friends and family. It's very central to your way of being as a social sort of human.
Yeah.
And so we then realized that this is a place where consumers are hanging out constantly. It's a place where there is very little unfamiliarity, and it's also a place that's very cheap for someone to actually sort of send and receive messages. That's because the data that is sent and received, or the data cost from sending and receiving a message is very low. But it's also because people often have WhatsApp data bundles, so it's even cheaper than just normal data. So then that led us to think, well, can you not build a sort of a research ecosystem or a sort of interaction platform inside of WhatsApp where you can interface with people, through the WhatsApp channel? And
is
that's
this through a bot, or is it like a form, a normal form that one would interact with?
No, it's like a bot. So it's like it's like communicating with a bot that it immediately responds to you. So I think that that's the key thing that we do that others won't be able to do, is because we sit inside of WhatsApp, we give greater access to people that are harder to access in other channels. And it also has really shown that we can get responses and we can interact with people much more seamlessly and faster than other research companies seem to be able to. So, for example, we'll launch a campaign and we'll have a survey listed on our surveys, so you can access the surveys from the menu, and that survey will come about, and we will notify the people that qualify for that survey that there's a survey available for them. And within 30 minutes, we'll typically have about 100 people who've completed that survey. So we'll observe just people, answering frantically because there's an incentive for them, which I haven't spoken to now, which is airtime. Currently airtime. So it's quite a sort of a mutually beneficial system that we've got going, where people can earn a little bit of airtime for doing a task that takes pretty quick. It's also not too labor intensive, or doesn't require much additional learning of how to work a new system. So we've really found, in terms of our turnaround times and response rates, it's been pretty exceptional, and probably faster than we would have even been able to anticipate.
Have you noticed if whether incentivizing or not has an influence on the type of answers you get back?
So it definitely it attracts someone that is interested in earning for doing a task, which obviously isn't everyone. But in terms of like, is this a practice of in terms of data quality and accurateness of responses? This is how research is done, regardless. And in fact, it's sort of because we have a whole lot of checks in place to make sure that all the data that comes through is accurate. And some of them are like sort of more algorithmic, where we actually sort of do some checks against different answers to see if it makes sense. And others are actually more, we'll do sort of some sampling and phone people and check it out, or we'll ask them to prove that what they said they do or have done, they actually have done. So examples like if you said you purchased something, then we might ask you to submit a slip, or if you're if you're a customer of this company, then just can you demonstrate that? So it enables us to be quite sort of agile in the way that we can verify things. But the main reason I'm saying this is because people are interested in doing more and more surveys because they get more airtime. And then that's often one of the requests, is people messaging and saying, please, can I do more surveys? But for them to be able to do more surveys, they need to have a record of giving accurate responses. So anytime someone submits sort of false information, or even for responses that are sort of subpar in terms of what we've asked for, if we ask for an explanation and that they don't really give a good one, we'll exclude them from any further research. So there is sort of there's an incentive in the system itself, which means that it allows us to get accurate data on a consistent basis, as what I've observed.
Okay, I like that there's a DQ element to it, and you sort of profile your respondents to make sure that they don't dirty the data in future surveys. So how do you deal with the anonymity aspect? If a survey needs to remain anonymous.
Sure. So when someone, first thing, just to understand how it all works from a profiling point of view. So when someone signs up, they give a few of their demographic data points, like their income bracket and their age, and we also ask like the education level and those kinds of things. So then when a client wants to access a segment based on a demographic criteria, example, like someone's interested in people earning between 2,000 and 6,000 Rand per month, then we would only show the survey to people that qualify. So there's that sort of a condition, we call it like conditional logic or screening inside of the bot itself, which means that we'll only ever get people that qualify initially, and then we can go a step further and screen them behaviorally based on maybe their purchasing habits or another question that fits into the context of the survey. But to the question about data privacy, so we have those data points on those individuals, which when they sign up, in order for them to sign up, actually they need to agree to their data being used for research purposes, to put it simply. So if they don't, then they can't sign up. And then in terms of like displaying the data and how it gets represented back to clients, we don't display any of the PII information, the personally identifiable information, to the clients. And that's basically like the name, their software number. And those are the two main ones. Otherwise, most of it is very anonymized. It's as I said, it's those demographic data points like age and income bracket. So there's no way of really knowing who answered in this particular way without having their name or number.
Okay, no, that's awesome to hear. So if I'm a client and I'm looking for your services, in terms of the types of surveys that you guys can conduct, what are the different types? And are there any limitations? Are there, certain types of surveys that you can't do?
Yeah, for sure. So there aren't any limitations in the types. We can, so in terms of how we ask questions, we can do it sort of a number of different ways, like video, text, audio through voice notes, pictures, and then we can also specify the kind of response that they give. For example, an email address or location. The database of people that we have is majority people that want to earn airtime, which places them sort of in the lower LSMs. So in terms of access to participants, that is like where a majority of the people that we can give you responses from will come from. So for example, a ShopRite or a KFC planning to use sort of various digital payments or that kind of thing. But then in terms of going a bit higher and you wanting to target people based, that use more technologically related products and things that are earning a bit higher, the airtime incentive isn't obviously as attractive. So we're actually implementing a new system now where we pay in cash as well. And we're actually doing a survey right now targeting SME business owners. But the infrastructure isn't sort of set up to be as fast, and I don't think it will ever be as fast because it will always take a bit longer to recruit the people that necessary for a high income survey. But to answer like what kinds of surveys, so people or businesses will either be looking at coming in early, trying to understand if they should launch a new product or a new business, and we often term that product discovery. And then things might mature, and often what we'll find is, and what we as a Delta do as well, is we'll do a survey and we'll get say 200 responses, and we'll identify the responses that we like the most, as in these guys have gone the extra mile to really explain what they're thinking, and that's an indication of someone who's quite reflective and sort of willing to share more than most. So those people will then be selected, and we'll set up interviews with those people, which is then our sort of recruitment category. And so typically we'll do 10 interviews with those people. We'll set them up with a Calendly link, and then conduct interviews. And from there, often what will happen is you'll understand a deeper why of so someone said they do this, but now you actually interview them and you understand that, it's because the taxis, like, this at this time it's more expensive, or like I have to pay for 2 seats because if I get loads of shopping, then I can't. They say that I can't actually sit with all the shopping on one seat. It takes up another seat, so it's more expensive. So I need to do more trips, and those kinds of things where you might not always necessarily get and the underlying why just from a survey. From that, then it allows you to start thinking about the future and what does these findings look like in a product or in a solution. And so then you start to look at building a concept testing survey, which is about taking what you found, proposing a solution to people, and seeing what they think of it and would they pay for it. And you try and steer clear of being too hypothetical and asking people for too much of would you and questions about the future, because often what people say is not necessarily what people do, but it still does give you an indication of like, does this sound like it would be of value to you? So I mean, think about it in that sort of spectrum in terms of product discovery, going from early stages to testing a concept. But then there's also other cases for marketing where a business might want to maybe check some of the positioning of their brand. Does this resonate with customers, or how does a customer speak? What do they, when they speak about eating this kind of food, how do they speak about that food? Or when they say they're socializing with their friends on the weekend, like how do they refer to that interaction on Monday? And what's the slang and what's the language of the people? And so those are a couple of them. I think the interesting ones that have now emerged is is recruiting, which I gave an example with user interviews, but now also for micro influencers to do like social media campaigns for you as a brand, where someone might do an Instagram post or a story, then send evidence that they've done it, and then be rewarded for that, like, piece of media that they put online, which we've just done recently, and it's been quite interesting to observe that. So what we are starting to move towards is more being an interaction layer, as I call it, or an interface between business and consumers, where consumers trust that if they do a task, they will be rewarded for it. So that's a big deal, because if you as a brand want to go on your own and try and get someone to do something, you spend a lot of time convincing them that you actually will pay them, and they don't really trust you. So for us to now have this trusted consumer base of people that understand that if they do something, the money will come to them, then it means that you can sort of open it up into a few more channels and actually get creative in what you ask people to do for an incentive. And I mean, the biggest case is going to be around marketing. I've given an example for social media posts and recruiting and things. Another interesting example for an automation case is that with Twitter, you can allow people or give people the option to almost open the editing rights of their Twitter account to you through the use of Twitter's API. Which means that if a brand wants to do a big campaign and get a ton of retweets on a tweet, for example, then they would be able to list it as a possible tweet on our platform. And so, say, Pepsi comes and wants everyone to retweet something, then we could list that and have people retweet it through the platform, because we've actually sort of integrated their Twitter accounts into our platform, or we've allowed them to, they've given us access to retweet on their behalf if they request it. Yeah, so I think that's a lot of like the thinking and the way forward. A big aspect and a reason pushing this is because iOS 14. I'm not sure how aware you of that, but iOS 14 was the latest release by Apple, which is had a whole lot of implications on data and data privacy, particularly around cookies. So whereas before, and even think more like 5 years ago, you would sort of been able to know everything about an individual based on their digital history. You'd almost be able to like build out an exact profile of who they are, because all of that data was so freely available to access. Since there's a few things that have happened since like the Trump campaign and a lot of that exposure of Facebook activity, things have reduced slowly, but this has been a big landmark in actually completely clamping down on a lot of the data that is accessible to everyone. So the main thing is cookies. Now you can't know as much about a consumer's digital presence as you used to, which means that as an advertiser, if you're wanting to advertise to a segment of people based on a lot of personalized like attributes or behavioral and demographic characteristics, it's not as easy for you to do that. And that means that you often sending your ad or your piece of content to the wrong person who isn't going to convert. So in marketing, you often speak about your ROAS, your return on ad spend, or your cost of customer acquisition. And Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or any of the social medias are often a really good and lucrative channel for businesses to acquire customers. But now, since this release of iOS 14, it's actually a lot more expensive for people to acquire customers through these social media channels, which means that previously they would have been acquiring customers at 100 Rand. Their product is maybe 200 Rand, so it makes sense, and there's still margin there. But now, if they're acquiring a customer at 150, and they've got other costs associated with delivering it, the margin might almost be too slight for them to actually justify growing that old digital route that they used to do. Which means that marketers are now looking for other channels and ways of acquiring customers. And there's a number of them that have emerged recently, and there are increasingly novel ways of doing so. But essentially what we see this as is fitting into a possible acquisition channel for brands to actually go and reach out to individuals, firstly understanding who they should be reaching out to based on the survey answers and sort of consumer profiling surveys, where you understand, oh, these people really suffered with this problem that we solved, and they are, X and Y in terms of demographics. Majority of them work in this space, so we know these are the people we need to go after. And then from those, then you can resurvey and target that specific audience of people, and potentially even use it as eyeball as lead generation, where you actually ended up taking them through a research journey where, at the end point, you actually propose what your offering is and ask them if they'd be willing to sign up or to become a customer. And I think that's where it becomes really interesting, is because it allows you to be very close and intimate with someone who starts as a research participant, but ultimately could end up as an ambassador for your brand if you actually listen to them and make the changes that they want. And you go through this research journey with people where you continuously come back to them to ask for their opinion. And then ideally at that end point, they are so sold on what it is that you're doing that they want to become a customer. And they could then, refer other people to become customers as well.
Wow. I think you touched on a lot there. I do know what the fallout between Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg regarding the privacy policies that Apple implemented is now closing a lot of avenues for this type of data to be used, and profiles created of individuals. But and it really speaks to what I was going to ask you next, which is what is in store for the future in terms of features and all of that. But what I want to ask you now is what is your footprint like? How has the growth been like for Aibo since its launch in April?
So the growth has been really good. It's only South Africans at this stage, and that's because we pay people in airtime and we pay them to a South African cell number. So we've made a strategic decision to stay here for this year while we sort of evolve the product and are able to really make sure that we've got, we can deliver quality data at scale before we start to enter the rest of Africa. And so the rest of Africa move is going to come probably early next year. The infrastructure will first need to be set up, and the infrastructure basically means being able to pay people in additional regions, and as well as paying people in airtime, we are now really looking at additional ways of incentivizing people, and that's both in additional forms of money, but also in new kinds of incentive structures, like more prize-based lottery sort of systems, where the reward isn't maybe linear. It might be more of a higher payoff, but also a lower payoff if you don't get anything. So I think there's a lot that we'll probably start to learn as we trial those different systems. But rest of Africa will come next year, and I think it will probably start with a lot of our conglomerate companies looking to go in, expand into those regions or understand the consumer segments better over there. There are a lot of the South African, financial services companies that have a big presence in the rest of Africa. As well as that, though, I think we're obviously based in the EU as well, and so we've got a number of connections and a network over there. But globally, what's happening is places for growth are, in terms of region-wise, places for growth are being reduced to South America and Africa, and Africa has probably got the most growth potential out of every continent in the world. So I think we've seen a lot of sort of more venture capital interest in Africa, and a lot of investors actually starting to realize that Africa is a continent that they need to start really understanding, so that they can then position their products to really like suit and be appreciated or adopted by an African consumer, which is actually quite different to an American or Western consumer. So just in line with that, I think that will start to be like we will look to grow the international footprint, which won't be consumers outside of Africa, but more investors and organizations that are in the rest of the world that are looking to understand the African consumer. Yeah.
Okay. And second last question is, I'm really intrigued about how, you're looking to sort of incorporate payments into Able. And, I'm sitting here thinking, are you looking at, strategic partnerships in that regard? For example, if you had, an established digital wallet company that already facilitates those type of payments and already integrates with, a lot of, services that individuals would want to, sort of interact with, like paying your DSTV, paying your traffic fines, paying this, paying that. Are you at the stage looking at those type of strategic partnerships, or is it still a closed system at the moment?
No, I mean, we definitely are and open to a lot of things. So I think that's a very good sort of avenue to look at. A digital wallet that has sort of existing trust is something that we've been looking at actually with Y Group as well. Well, not that we've been in much chats with them, but just to understand the rewards sort of ecosystem where people can be sent a rewards voucher that can ultimately be redeemed for anything, from any retailer, from any shop. So that that's one aspect. But I think what you're speaking to in terms of wallets is another really great opportunity. As well as even just cash payouts that are very automated, based on a trigger inside of WhatsApp that once a person does it, there's an immediate EFT that fires off. I think it's really exciting to start to look at all those different things and actually not be too concerned with what we think is right. I think ultimately what we'll do is test and see. We set up a wallet, we set up a reward system, we set up like a cash payout, and see what works best in terms of like retention, and if the feedback of being paid immediately in that way is like really good, then we'll go for that. So yeah, I think that's sort of the approach that we've always taken. We said, well, we don't really know, to be honest. We just need to try and see and do a few different things and see what the best outcome is, and then let's go with that one. And it makes it also slightly less pressurizing, because you can actually just set it up and see what happens. But as you say, there's kind of a number of different ways we could go about it. It's exciting because it definitely opens it up to more customer segments, and more for us as well in terms of business segments, but also in terms of the people who engage and answer the surveys and do the research. It might enable a lot more people to become interested and incentivized in a way that actually makes sense for them. Whereas now airtime excludes quite a lot of the sort of middle to high income bracket of people.
Awesome. Tim, is there anything else that I might have missed that you would want to sort of highlight about any new features to be expecting in a couple of months? Anything that I might have missed that you'd want to mention?
No, I think we've covered it all. I think the main thing that, and just in terms of where we're going as well, is that right now a lot of the servicing of, or the setting up of the bots and things is manual, and next year we're going to start to automate a lot of that. Almost generating bots from as the customer makes an order of a survey, that will immediately be sent out. And our response times, as I said, are already a lot faster than other market research companies, as we understand it. So we'll do a survey and we'll return the data and the visualization in 3 days. But with the automation, it will reduce that further, and potentially even enable us to drop the pricing. So the price as well is another factor that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you next about the fees. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the fee structure we've got now is based on a setup fee and a variable per respondent fee. Like someone who answers the survey that's a variable fee that we charge, because some of that money also goes to them for actually completing it. I don't want to maybe say the amounts now in case things change, because we also just are constantly like trialing the pricing structure. But what I can say is that as we see it, or as all the research I've done, we are significantly cheaper than any other market research company. So most of them are about between 150 per respondent, and then maybe up to 500 if it's a very hard to access person. And we'll sit now on average at about, with the setup fee included, we'll sit on about 60 Rand per respondent, 65, 70. And that is a lot. It's a lot cheaper, but it's also a lot faster. So I think the way that we would like to businesses to see it is that they can do research, like as they get an idea that they want to test, they don't have to think about it as, oh, now I've got to go through this whole big research campaign to set it up, to have a meeting with this company, to then do the brief, to do the understanding, and these research campaigns will typically be months and months before they actually get their results back, and you've got 15 people sitting on a call, and it just seems like archaically slow. So we intend to be exceptionally fast, and for businesses to be able to like think of something that they want to test, put it into action, and send it out to people, get the results back immediately. I think once that is, that system is really established from an automation point of view, it's going to allow us to scale a lot more. It's going to allow us to charge less, and it's also going to allow businesses generally to make better decisions, because the biggest issues typically that businesses will, a lot of the issues that businesses will fall into will be because they've made decisions on bad data. They actually just didn't know, or they made a decision having to guess about something. And now if the ability for you to get the data to make that decision is super fast and it's cheap, it will ultimately grow the market more, because it will enable businesses who wouldn't have done research in this particular context to be able to do research because of all of those things I've just spoken to.
I think you've said a mouthful, and we could go on. I'm quite intrigued and excited about Aibo as a product. I work in the data space myself. I'm a data professional. I'm quite interested in what if I come on as a client, what type of data am I going to get back, and what type of analysis I can draw there, and different integration points that I can then use with the rich research data set. So this is quite intriguing and exciting, product offering in the market. And I think for the big players that have been there, this is really going to do a shake-up in the industry. And I'd like to say all the best, and good luck. I think in future I'd want a follow-up interview just to dive in a bit on the Delta. I think there's quite interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah, no, definitely. You'll see. It's going to be very big, and it's going to be a big company. And I'm a bit scared, but thanks so much. It's been fun. I really enjoyed it. I think there were some good questions. We covered a lot of interesting things, and the research space is definitely going to evolve. And as I said, I think the way that businesses interact with consumers is going to be a bit different 10 years from now. So I'm hoping that we can be a part of that, and particularly allowing businesses access to insights from people that they actually wouldn't have been able to get insights from before. Yeah, so thanks so much. I also really enjoyed it. It was nice to chat.
Thank you very much, Tim. Hopefully we'll chat again sometime.
Okay, thanks, Lebo. Yeah, have a good rest of the week. Cheers.
Same to you. Cheers.